All right, so for problem number 33, it says, as mentioned in the chapter, opinion polling organizations contact their respondents by sampling random phone numbers. Although interviewers now can reach about 68% of U.S. households, the percentage of those contacted who agree to cooperate with the survey have fallen from 43% in 1997 to only 14% in 2012. According to the Pew Research Center for People and the Press. Each household, of course, is independent of the others. So they're going to ask us some questions, but they gave us a clue right there in the very beginning. These are going to be independent. In other words, they're going to call one house, then call the next house. They're not calling two houses at once. So that gives us a clue as to how we're going to approach doing the statistics that they're going to ask us. So for part A, it says, what is the probability that the next household on the list will be contacted but refuse to cooperate? So this is, it's not that hard, but it's not easy either. So for part A, what they want to know is, what is the probability that you're going to contact them? Because there's really two parts to this when you think about it. And, right, so when you think about this, you're going to contact them and they refuse. So let's reread this, and this is what I want you to process. Remember how Mr. Adams was saying and or? So when we use or, we use one formula. When we use and, we use a different formula. And whether we use and or depends on how the question is framed. So we have some probabilities that they've given us. So we know that interviewers can contact about 62%, right? Is that right? And then, but we know that only 14% agree to cooperate. So let's write that down. So I'm going to say the probability of contact is 0.62. And the probability of cooperating is 0.14. So now to calculate this probability, who remembers the formula for the intersection? We should probably write that down too. Look in your notes real quick. So when I say look in your notes and help me finish this. A union B. How do we figure that out? What do we do with those probabilities? Actually, you multiply them.
Wait. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're both correct.
Right? So you're going to say the probability of A times the probability of B. But here I have, so this is my A, this is my B. I'm going to multiply them. But how do I figure out the probability of them refusing? Well, the probability of them refusing is the complement of them cooperating. 1 minus the probability of cooperating. Or 1 minus 0.02. 0.14. Does that make sense? Which is what, 0.86? So to figure out this probability, I'm simply going to say 0.62. That's the probability of you getting in contact with them first. And then multiplying that by the probability of them refusing. If you do the math on that, you get about 0.5332. Does that make sense? Any questions before we move forward? All right, so now for part B, it says, what's the probability in 2012 what's the probability in 2012 of failing to contact but not getting them to agree to the interview? Oh, wait. See this little word? So it says failing to contact or. So this is easy. So I need the probability of, I'm just going to write no contact. But now or is this one, right? So remember, when we talk about set notation, the upside down U means and. That's an intersection. And this word here is or. And there's a different formula for that, right? So remember that when I have the probability of A or B, then I just take the probability of A and I add it to the probability of B. You guys probably don't know that off the top of your head because I just taught it to you yesterday, but that's why you take notes. And so, or they, oh, I got to read this carefully. Oh, wow, this is a complicated one. Or of contacting the household but not agreeing to the interview. So this is interesting because now I have contact and not agreeing, right? So this is like a combo of all of it, right? So what does this look like? Well, fail to contact. I know the probability to contact is 62. So fail to contact. So basically what I need to do is I'm going to say this plus something times something, right? Because this one you got to multiply because of the and, right? That's how you figure out this probability. And then we got to figure out this one. So if I know that 62% is contact, then no contact is the complement. So I'm going to say 1 minus 0.62. That takes care of this component. Then over here I got to figure out what's the probability of contacting. Well, I know the probability of contacting the person, all right? And what's the probability of no interview? So I want to read this real careful. So 14% agree to the interview, is that correct? Yeah. So it would be the complement. So it'd be, for them not doing the interview, would be 1 minus 14. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, before we move any further, are we good on what I'm talking about? Okay, so now this whole thing equals 0.9123 if you plug that in the calculator. Okay, let's do part C. Show another way to calculate the probability of B. So remember how Mr. Adams said you got to calculate and add things up? Well, another way is to use some sort of complement. So we got to think about what the complement could be. So let's reread B and then try to think of what the complement would be. So you're going to get contact or contact and no interview. Or wait, I said that wrong. There's either no contact or you do get contact and you get no interview. So what's the opposite of that?
Contact and interview.
Yeah, you get a contact with somebody and an interview. So basically, that's the complement that we're looking for. So it's very simple. I need to know the probability of. Well, now we got to figure out, is it and or? Right?
That's and.
Yeah, it's and. So I need to figure out the probability. I got to figure out how to. So I'm going to write it out, and I want you guys to write it out too, because you kind of need to see this. No contact or contact, I'm going to abbreviate a little bit, and no interview is equal to 1 minus contact and interview. Because I don't think you can get an interview unless you contact them, right? So then what is that? Well, in order to get the contact plus the interview, you need the probability of the contact. Oops. Times the probability of the interview. So you get 1 minus, what was that, 0.62 times the 0.14. And if you plug it in the calculator, you get 0.9132, which is the same that you get here. Okay? Does that make sense to you guys? Wow, as best as it could. I just showed you this stuff yesterday.